The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus was teaching in the temple, and a large crowd was listening to him. He said, "Beware of the scribes, who like to walk around in long robes, and to be greeted with respect in its marketplaces, and have the first seats in the synagogues, and places of honor at banquets. They devour the houses of widows, and for the sake of appearance say long prayers. They will receive a greater condemnation." Then Jesus sat down opposite the treasury and watched the crowd putting money into the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, each worth about a penny. Then he called his disciples over and said to them, "I tell you truly, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury, because all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had to live on." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
On Friday, I gave a couple of talks to a faith formation conference in San Jose, California. 3 dioceses had teamed up to put on this conference, and it drew about 2,000 people. So it was wonderful. The bishop gave the opening talk, and he mentioned again the terrible drought going on out there. They have not had these rain, for years now, and things are just drying up awfully. So they are really hurting. Now, what do we hear today in the first reading? There's a drought going on in the land of Israel. And no rain, things are drying up. And here's this poor widow that Elijah comes upon. And what is she doing? She's making her last little piece of cake or bread, her last bit of flour and last bit of oil. And when that's gone, she and her young son are going to die. And she'd have to watch him die first, because he's just a little fellow. And it would, just imagine the heartbreak of watching your own last child die, and then you're going to be next. It's a pathetic kind of situation. And God sends Elijah to her. And the prophet says, "Don't worry. God has spoken to me and promised that your little bit of flour and oil are not going to disappear until God sends rain once again upon the land. So let's just trust in God. And by the way, I want to eat along with you too." Okay. So sure enough, day after day, she continues to make little bread so they can continue to eat, and the little supply does not run out until God finally sends the rain. It's a wonderful story. And it tells us several important truths about our God. Now, first of all, that God does not abandon those who are down and out, those who don't have anything going for them. Elijah was not sent to the wealthy ones of the land of Israel, but to this widow who has nothing going for her. It's a single parent family that he is sent to, all right? God does not forget those who are most needy. And so she trusts the word of Elijah. And sure enough, she's able to feed her son, and the prophet until God finally sends the rain. Secondly, God has compassion on anyone, on all of us, when we feel down and out. We sometimes feel like, our jug is running out too, and we have no more left to give, emotionally or physically or whatever. We are running on empty. And so in those times, we turn with confidence and trust to God and say, I can't do this by myself. I desperately need you. And God is there for us. I recall years ago, and we religious have a vow of obedience, right? I was stationed in Milwaukee, and was teaching and speaking at parishes and doing spiritual direction and just having a wonderful time and all kinds of friends. I was content and happy. And one day, my superiors called me in and say, guess what? We got a new job for you. And so they said, we want you to go to Huntington, Indiana, and take over the job as director of our novices, the first year young men entering the Capuchin order. Well, now we have a vow of obedience, right? Okay, and so we promise, we vow that we will not just do our own thing. We'll do what the church or the order needs us to do. So there I am, and I think in Huntington, Indiana, if it isn't the place God made last, it's the one he forgot about first, you know? And I didn't want to go there, and the job didn't appeal to me, but I said, you have a vow of obedience, okay? And God has helped you so much in the past. Come on, let go. Let go of your comfort zone, okay? And so I said yes, and wonderfully, the people down there were so good. And I learned so many things, and I found different skills I didn't realize I had. Just because, God calls and we respond and God blesses us. Even though I felt I didn't want to leave all the people that I had attached to. God helps us when we are down and out. The third lesson is that these widows gave the last bit that they had out of their love for God. The widow that Jesus noticed in the treasury, okay? Everybody else is watching the rich people put their large amounts in the treasury, and this little widow comes along with 2 pennies and puts them in, and it's the last thing she has to live on. She trusted God completely, and Jesus noticed that and said, come on, look what's happening here. They gave out of their abundance. She gives out of her poverty. She's the one who's blessed. And so often, when we let go and trust God, once again, God comes through. There's a beautiful story from the life of St. Francis of Assisi. One day, a poor woman came to the friary door asking for some kind of alms for herself and her children, and their brothers went through the house and couldn't find anything they had left to give her. One friar said, we have a New Testament here. Can we give that to her? She can sell it and get some money for her family. And other friars said, no, that's ours, that's the Bible. And St. Francis said, brothers, give that to our poor sister. Jesus will be more pleased with us if we do what he asks of us in the gospel and not just read about it. So they gave the New Testament to the poor widow. And of course, the friars were blessed by God. So, Thanksgiving and Christmas are special times. See, God is pleased when we share what we have with those who are needy and down and out. And Christmas and Thanksgiving are those special times. And I'm always proud of this parish because you are so generous at those times, in fact, all year. Because you care about the poor and the needy. And you let it be known by the way you generously share with them. So once again, I just ask that you would be mindful of that. Interesting, we just asked this morning about, our parish needs some extra money now because our budget is pretty strained. So we have to call upon you and all of us to be generous, as those widows in the scriptures are so beautifully portrayed. They're willing to let go and trust that God will take care of them. So we just, as St. Francis said, God is so much more pleased if we do what he asks of us and not just read about it or hear about it in the scriptures. May God continue to bless all of you for your generosity.